Joining me now is Ron Nehring. He's national spokesman for the Ted Cruz campaign, former California state chairman of the Republican National Committee. He joins us from Miami. Ron, in this incredible election year, how does your candidate view Tuesday in Florida? If he doesn't win it, don't you want someone else to win it other than Trump?
Well, Larry, we have a 50-state strategy for our campaign. The Ted Cruz campaign has been organizing across all 50 states for months and months. And when we organize across every state, we're able to capitalize on certain developments as they occur. We won in Alaska, for example, and in Maine and in Kansas. And, those victories could not have been predicted, months and months in advance. So we have to organize, everywhere. And it's really not our strategy to win by losing. I mean, we win by competing everywhere, and we maximize our opportunities to pick up delegates. So we're fighting hard for the state of Florida. I'm here today. We had a great rally with Carly Fiorina, and we have a team of volunteers fully engaged across the state. We're going to play to win everywhere.
Did you call for the Fiorina endorsement, or did she contact you?
Oh, I don't know how the details of how that got worked out. I just know that the reaction on Twitter and in the crowd, and that we've been getting in by email and through contacts from the website have just been off the charts. Carly Fiorina has a very strong constituency within the Republican Party, and I know her firsthand because I was chairman of the California Republican Party when she ran for the Senate, and she engendered a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. So it was pretty exciting.
Ron. Strategically, though, if Trump wins Florida, isn't that pretty much the ball game?
Oh, no, I don't think so at all. In fact, we need any candidate in order to become the Republican nominee needs 1,237 delegates. Donald Trump is nowhere close to that. We're 99 delegates behind him. There are plenty of delegates that are remaining, up for grabs. California alone, which votes on June the 7th, has 169 delegates that are available. So no one's close to becoming the nominee in terms of reaching that threshold. It's wide open, and the dynamics continues to change. I mean, we have a few days ago we had a 5-candidate field. Now we have a 4-candidate field. We predict that will continue to narrow. But make no mistake, we have to fight hard in every single state because we don't want this to go to some type of brokered convention. We want the voters at the polls to make this decision, and the game is still wide open.
Do you see the possibility, though, of a brokered convention?
Well, we don't want to see that. I mean, Senator Cruz has been very clear on that. I'm a former member of the Republican National Committee myself. Nobody wants to see that. We want the nominee of the Republican Party to have a clear mandate from voters from across the country by having that majority level support that's represented and embodied in that number of 1,237. There are some people who've advocated for a convention strategy trying to force this to go into a brokered convention, but that's not something which we support at all. We think that's a bad idea. And we want to win this at the ballot box.
How do you explain the Trump phenomena?
Well, it's a very interesting phenomenon. If you take a look at how he's operated in business, and you can see that he's applying the same type of pattern to how he's operated in business with these, grand plans, these grand promises, grand proposals, and then many of those businesses have later on flopped, and he simply blamed other people. He's using that same type of technique on the American people as he runs for president of the United States. Unfortunately, if he succeeds in becoming the nominee or, would become the president, it's all of us who are going to wind up, paying the price there. But what I think is an important thing to note is that people are frustrated. People in both parties are frustrated with the establishment in Washington, D.C. And I think that candidates have tapped into that. And certainly we felt that on the campaign trail a great deal. And Senator Cruz is someone who went to Washington as a senator, defeated the establishment in his own state of Texas to become the Republican nominee for the Senate, and then went to Washington and challenged both parties. And that's part of the reason why Senator Cruz is in the strong position which he's in. He's not one of those, 15 other candidates who've dropped out because he has challenged the status quo. It's very interesting. The mood of the electorate right now is unlike anything that I've seen in 25 years in politics, in that there is that deep frustration with the status quo, people looking for a vehicle to change that.
All right, how does Florida look?
Well, Florida is a very dynamic situation. I mean, we've seen in other states that the polls can say one thing one day and then the voters say something else the next. For example, in the state of Maine, Donald Trump had a nearly 20-point lead, and Senator Cruz wound up winning Maine, even though both candidates contested it, both candidates showed up there. In Florida, we've seen changes in the polls. We know that, Donald Trump has been in the lead. Marco Rubio has been in bad shape in his own state. We don't think Marco Rubio is on track to win the state at all. It's just a question of who does win it, and that's why we're certainly competing here. I think that Marco Rubio has a very, very difficult time rationalizing continuing with the campaign, especially in light of the most recent results where he finished third in 3 states and fourth in another. So we think that there's an opportunity here, and that's why we're engaged, and Senator Cruz is here asking for the support of Floridians.
Ron, there's talk everywhere that nobody likes Ted Cruz in the Senate. Help me out on this. Is that true? Is he very unpopular among the Senate, his confreres?
Well, I'm not in the Senate, myself, but one thing is for sure, that Senator Cruz didn't go to Washington, D.C. in order to, go to cocktail parties and schmooze the establishment and so on and so forth. He went to the Senate to implement and to be the man that he promised the people of Texas he would be. And that's part of the reason why he won his own state of Texas by 17 points, which is a big, big difference compared to Marco Rubio's condition in his own state of Florida, where the last poll that we saw had him down, by double digits. So I don't think he's the most popular person in Washington, and I don't think this is a year where you want to be the most popular person in Washington, that's for sure.
What's he like as a candidate? What's he like person to person from your standpoint? What's he like to work with?
Yeah, that's a very insightful question, because very often in politics, candidates are defined by what goes through the media filter, or what do your opponents say, or things like that. And very often the candidate you see behind the scenes is different. And what really strikes me, what really I took special notice of, is there was a rally held in South Carolina the night before the primary, and we're in a holding room there, and I've only come on board recently in the campaign in this capacity, and there was a very limited number of people in the room, and Senator Cruz was there with his wife Heidi, and with his 2 daughters, and there's Senator Cruz, literally running around a person, chasing his daughters who he was playing with, and that's not the type of thing that you typically see in public. That's part of the private side of a candidate, and but that's something which more people need to see that, because Senator Cruz is someone who's, of course, he's very sharp, very intelligent. Clerked at the U.S. Supreme Court for Judge Rehnquist, was Solicitor General of Texas, elected to the U.S. Senate, and all of that. But there really is this private side of the man where I see someone who is very compassionate, who cares very, very deeply about his family. And I think that those are important things for people to know, because a candidate is not just an amalgam of policy proposals, but at the end of the day, they're a human being. And I'm very, very pleased to see what our candidate is like, beyond just what you see on the campaign trail.
So you say there's a warmth. Do you think that warmth needs to come through more?
Well, ultimately, I think that by the end of the campaign, voters are going to see the candidates for who they truly are. And there's simply so much attention that the media gives to these candidates, especially today, from all these different angles. So I think that ultimately, will come out. Senator Cruz took the opportunity up in New Hampshire to talk about, his sister, and how his sister, became a victim of drug addiction, and and all of the things that he did, to intervene with her sister and so on. And he told that story, not for political purposes, but so that people would have a little bit of a chance to know, who he really is, and the story that led him there. I've taught campaign school for a long time, and one of the things that I've learned, being both a candidate myself and being involved in politics, is that people really do want to know where you stand on the issues. Issues are very, very important, but people also want to know your narrative. What are the life experiences you've gone through, and what do those experiences and how you've handled them, what does that tell people about what type of person you would be in office? I think that's very important, and I hope certainly that comes through in the course of the campaign.
Nancy Reagan, the former First Lady, passed away. I'm going to her funeral. She was a dear friend. Last time I spoke to her a few months ago, she was embarrassed she said, by the debates and the way they were being conducted in the Republican Party. How have you reacted to that? How do you think former President Reagan would have reacted to the way the debates have gone?
Well, Ronald Reagan was no pushover. He was a tough cookie, and I remember, I recall seeing those moments. I was only 10 years old at the time when Ronald Reagan and George Bush were going at it in the New Hampshire primary, and he grabbed that microphone in that debate and reminded everyone that he paid for that microphone. So he could be tough, but I think that certainly the tone, and I have to attribute this in large part to Donald Trump, because we've never seen someone who would use vulgarity in the way that he does, who would hurl these personal insults all of the time on the debate stage, and then on Twitter and social media and on television and the like, and really personalize and overreact to things the way that he has. Ronald Reagan was someone who always, he would never be in the Oval Office unless he was wearing a jacket, because he felt that there was a certain dignity that had to go along with being president of the United States. And I think that he would be shocked at a lot of the things that particularly that Donald Trump has said, because no one else in this race has gone anywhere close to to bringing down the level of discourse than Donald Trump has. And I genuinely think that that's important, and I think that's, to a degree, an embarrassment to our party. Ron,
give our best to the senator, and thanks for joining us.
I will. Thank you, Larry.
Ron Nehring, the national spokesperson for the Ted Cruz presidential campaign.